Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about one of the biggest and most exciting changes that is happening right now in the world of pensions and retirement planning. And I know what you're thinking, how could pensions and retirement planning ever be exciting? Fair point, and I will be the first to admit that I'm a total nerd when it comes to any significant changes relating to any aspect of personal finance. However, this is a change that is worthwhile getting excited over, simply because it has the potential to revolutionize how Europeans are investing for retirement. And I'm calling out Europeans specifically because the change in question is the introduction of the pan-European personal pension product. So let's talk about what that is, why it's being introduced, and why I'm excited about it. The pan-European personal pension product, or PEPP for short, is exactly what its name suggests, a pan-European personal pension product. Pan-European is defined as something that relates to or involves all or most of the nations of Europe. A personal pension product is a pension which isn't a state pension or an occupational pension. In other words, it's a pension that isn't provided directly by either your government or your employer. You're putting money into it voluntarily. In Ireland, an example of an existing personal pension product would be a PRSA, or Personal Retirement Savings Account. Putting that all together, PEPP is a voluntary personal pension scheme that offers EU citizens a new option to save for retirement. In layman's terms, this is a pension product that is being offered at an EU level. So instead of EU citizens being confined only to the pension products that are being offered by the pension providers operating in their respective countries, they can now access PEPPs that are being offered by pension providers all across Europe. That's the biggest point here. EU citizens can now access the same pension products irrespective of what EU nation they live in. So why is it being introduced? Europe has a massive retirement crisis on its hands. The gap between how much retirement savings are required by EU citizens and how much is projected to be saved by retirement is estimated at €2 trillion per year. To put that number in context, that's over 13% of the total value of all goods and services produced in the EU in 2021, a truly massive number. Because of this gap, 20% of EU citizens are estimated to be at risk of poverty or social exclusion in retirement. In other words, 1 in 5 EU citizens won't have enough retirement savings to maintain a standard of living that's above the poverty line. You might be wondering why EU nations don't just pay their pensioners more money in retirement to solve this problem. After all, isn't that what state pensions are for? The issue is that state pensions themselves are becoming increasingly unsustainable. You see, the money that governments use to pay retirees a state pension comes from tax contributions that current workers in the workforce are paying. This is a very delicate system that relies on a certain balance between the number of retirees in retirement and workers in the workforce. If you have a situation where there's an increasing number of retirees but a decreasing number of workers, that's a problem. And it's a problem because all of a sudden governments aren't receiving the necessary amount of tax contributions from workers to pay for the pension of retirees. That's exactly what's happening not only in Europe but globally. People are living longer and less people are being born. In Europe, new births have been steadily declining since the 1960s, while life expectancies have been increasing. That translates into less workers entering the workforce and more retirees in retirement for longer. The EU currently has 4 working age people for every individual over the age of 65, a ratio of 4:1. By 2060, that ratio will fall to 2:1. In other words, more people than ever before will be receiving a state pension, with less people than ever before paying for it. And it's not as simple as just increasing the amount of tax contributions that workers are paying. That will just result in higher intergenerational inequality. Why should young people have to pick up the bill for retirees when there's no guarantee that they'll receive the same benefit in the future? That is literally the definition of a Ponzi scheme, robbing Peter Peter to pay Paul. Long story short, state pension systems can no longer be relied upon for retirement. Those systems won't necessarily disappear entirely, but they're incapable of providing the retirement income necessary for maintaining a reasonable standard of living. All of this boils down to one simple reality. EU citizens need to take ownership of their retirement planning. It's simply not possible anymore to rely on your government or your employer. You need to take matters into your own hands. European officials know this, and that's a big part of the reason why the pan-European personal pension product is being introduced. So let's talk about why I'm excited for PEPP. As an Irish person, my options for retirement investing are extremely limited. There are essentially 4 pension companies in the country who control the entire market, and if you want to invest in a pension, you're more or less forced to go with one of them. Having a small number of players control the entire market is rarely beneficial for the end consumer. Competition promotes competitive offerings. Take online brokerages, for example. There has been a significant rise in the number of online brokers operating in Europe. The Giro, Interactive Brokers, Book Zero, Trading 212, Trade Republic, the list goes on and on. As a result of that competition, investing in the stock market has never been more accessible than it is today. Not only is it extremely cheap, but it also features some of the most cutting-edge technology, which has made the investing experience seamless. This hasn't happened yet for pensions, but my hope is that the introduction of PEPP is the first step in the right direction. One single PEPP provider operating in any given EU country can now sell its pension products to the entirety of the EU. That means the existing players who previously only had to compete on a national level are now competing with pension providers from all over Europe. And it's not just insurance companies that can offer PEPPs. Investment management companies like Vanguard, who have historically offered some of the most cost-efficient investment products on the market, could in theory offer a PEPP to EU citizens. The more PEPP providers there are, the more competitive PEPP pricing will become, and the more advanced PEPP investment technology will become. You see, one of the biggest reasons why pension investing in Europe is still in the Stone Age is because the pension system in Europe is extremely fragmented. Every EU country has different pension providers, different pension products, and different rules which apply to pensions. That makes it incredibly difficult for a company to develop technology that could make pension investing as accessible as regular stock market investing. There are so many different factors to consider depending on what EU country you're operating in. Any startup company would need to be able to show potential investors that their idea has the ability to scale across the EU. Scaling a pension investment solution across the EU with the current system is very challenging, which is why it hasn't happened. This is where PEPP could make the biggest difference. A PEPP is a standardized pension product. It's the same for every EU citizen. So in theory, you could develop a platform that allows EU citizens to compare different PEPPs from different providers all across Europe, while also allowing them to make, manage, and monitor their PEPP investments all in one centralized place. The key here is making the pension investment process as simple as possible, because if you really want EU citizens to take ownership of their retirement planning, that's what needs to happen. People are never going to go out of their way to do all of this if it isn't as easy as just keeping all of their money in the bank. You can flash all of the scary statistics in the world in front of them and they will not care. I guarantee you. Outside of being a boon for technological development in the pension space, PEPPs themselves offer some pretty decent benefits over existing personal pension products. Most notably, because the product is pan-European, you can continue to use it even if you change residency within the EU. This is great in the era of remote working, as many workers have found themselves living in different countries because their job doesn't require their physical presence. Each PEPP will also come with a standardized key information document that will provide all of the information you need to know about the PEPP in question. Because this document is standardized, it should be easy to compare one PEPP to another, irrespective of whether or not that PEPP is being offered by the same provider. However, I do have some reservations about how successful the PEPP will be in practice. Don't get me wrong, I think the PEPP will definitely be better than what's currently available at a national level. Wouldn't be hard, but I just don't think it will be as impactful as it could be. Part of that has to do with how the PEPP is being structured, and the other part has to do with systemic issues that need solving at an EU level. My understanding is that every PEPP provider will offer the basic PEPP option, in addition to a maximum of 5 more PEPP options that the provider in question will come up with. This is very similar to the current PRSA system in Ireland, whereby the pension provider typically offers a default investment option for anyone who doesn't specify what they want to invest in. Outside of the default option, there are a suite of funds that you can choose from, and you can mix and match between those funds as you so desire. As with all default investment options, they are rarely of any real value in terms of providing adequate growth for your money over the long term, and I can imagine that this will be the case for the basic PEPP option. So that leaves us with the 5 other options that PEPP providers will be crafting themselves, and this really is the basis on which they'll compete with one another. Here's what we need to see in order for PEPPs to be successful. Within those 5 investment options, we need to see passively managed strategies, i.e. index fund investing. There needs to be an S&P 500 index fund, there needs to be an all-world index fund, there needs to be a European index fund, and there needs to be an emerging markets index fund. And not only that, but the funds need to be offered at an expense ratio that is similar or equal to equivalent ETFs and mutual funds that we invest in outside of our pension. We make very little progress here if the cost of these products aren't coming down, and I mean down. There is no reason why such a disparity needs to exist between the cost of investing in non-pension wrap products like ETFs and mutual funds and the cost of investing in funds that are offered as part of a product like a PEPP. Also, the fact that PEPP investors will only have a selection of 5 investment options is another root cause of my reservations. As much as I'm happy to see pan-European pension investing come into play, I have to ask myself, why are there still limitations on what we can invest in? Why can't I have a version of DeGiro called DeGiro Pension, where pension contributions are made to the platform and then the investor can choose to invest those contributions in any asset that DeGiro offers exposure to? Why can't this exist alongside PEPP? My assumption is that the fragmented nature of the European pension system makes it too complex for brokers to scale such a solution. So here's what I think needs to happen in Europe in order to truly tackle the retirement crisis. Number 1, there needs to be some degree of harmonization between EU nations in terms of the rules which are applicable to pensions. If EU nations can agree on things like how much an individual can contribute to their pension in any given year, the age at which an individual can access their pension, and how pensions will be taxed, it becomes a lot easier for companies to develop scalable solutions for pension investing. Number 2, the number of options for saving for retirement at the national level needs to be reduced significantly, with prioritization given to pan-European options. For example, in Ireland, thousands of companies have their own pension schemes that are exclusively offered to their employees. Outside of that, you have financial institutions that offer personal pension products to individuals who either A, don't work for an employer that offers a company scheme, B, are self-employed, or C, have a company scheme but want to invest additional money in a personal pension. And every single EU country will have their own set of pension products at both the corporate and personal level, making the entire system incredibly complex. Why does all of this nonsense need to exist? Why can't we just scrap all of the national systems and just have one or a series of broker-esque pension accounts at the EU level where individuals and corporations from all EU nations place their pension contributions? That way, everyone is using the same system and has access to the same options. And number 3, there needs to be a total overhaul in how we're approaching financial education. The way I see it, any past efforts to educate people on the importance of pension investing have failed because they're too broad and generic, they're not relatable, and they're not direct. People more or less need to be told exactly what to do and why they should do it. And that's a problem when it comes to the financial system because you're riding the line of financial advice. And with financial advice comes regulatory oversight and professional indemnity. So you can't just tell everyone what to do. That's not going to happen. But why can't we start presenting the data that matters? Why doesn't everyone know about the effectiveness of index fund investing and how that can be done via your pension? Why Why doesn't everyone know about the detrimental impact that inflation has on your bank account? There is a way to get the information that matters into people's hands in a way that makes sense to them without needing to cross the line of financial advice. Anyway, that's my rant over, and that's my thoughts on PEPP and the future of the pension system in Europe. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one.